Well, good morning. Welcome back to the broadcast, Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder. This is BRN AM for Friday, November 12th, 2021. And our top stories today: rising prices and interest rates, consumers and homeowners react, and is it time to reevaluate your credit cards? Well, joining me now to discuss this and a lot more is Carl Sullivan. He's the managing editor for North America of Flipboard. Carl, great to see you again. Thanks so much for joining us on the program this morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. And I'd just like to say happy Veterans Day to all of your listeners who've served. Thank you for your service.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Carl. And thanks again for keeping us abreast of what's top of mind on the Flipboard platform with over 100 million active users. Carl, let's talk about, I know some of the stories that you're tracking have to deal with consumer prices and also interest rates. What can you tell us?
Well, yeah, it seems like every time we talk recently, we've been talking about inflation. It's definitely kind of the story of the day. We just this week, the government announced that the cost of living rose 6.2% over the past year, and that's the highest rate increase in 30 years. So it's a very real thing. It's very significant.
Yeah, and we all see it. Gas prices. We talked last time you were on. We talked about the supply chain, the cost of goods going up, and I think wage growth has not. It's gone up significantly since the pandemic, but has not kept up with inflation. How are consumers managing? Are you seeing any discussion or articles or storyboards that really point to giving some solutions to consumers?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think gasoline is a great topic that you mentioned. There've been a lot of interest in gasoline stories on Flipboard. People have been looking up to see what the latest prices are. It is kind of one of those tough things, though. There's not a lot you can do. You have to pay the price at the pump that's there. Right now, I think a gallon of gas is averaging $3.42, according to AAA, and that varies, of course, from state to state. California is probably the most expensive, but states like Oklahoma and Arkansas are a lot lower. But I think we probably will see consumers maybe cut back a little bit on their driving. Maybe they'll look at electric vehicles down the road. Obviously not something you could do right away, but as you're thinking about your next car purchase, that might be a scenario that people are considering.
Yeah, I mean, people have to get to work though, Carl. And if you live in a city like I live in Charlotte, there's not a lot of mass transit. So in order to get from point A to point B, if you're returning to work, you got to use your car. So maybe they will go in the direction you're talking about. Carl, let's talk about food prices. That's another one where, we got to get to work, but we got to eat in order to sustain our bodies. Those prices, I just went to the supermarket this morning. My wife dispatched me there, picked up some yogurt and some other things. Those prices are really climbing as well.
Yeah, and again, that all goes back to the supply chain issues that we've talked about previously. It continues. There's still shortages of many goods and services, and then the transportation, getting products to the supermarkets, from the factories, from the farms to distribution centers, still continues to be an ongoing problem. And I think we see the government taking some steps to try to alleviate some of these issues by increasing hours at various ports and other things. But I think consumers should get used to this. It looks like these supply chain issues probably will not even out until sometime next year.
Yeah, and President Biden yesterday in my home city of Baltimore, at the Port of Baltimore, making a statement. Obviously very important. And we're so fortunate here in this country, if I could just say, we have farms, we're able to feed people. If you look around at other countries, they don't really have the luxury of the resources that we have here in the U.S. So I think even though we're going through this strife, things are expensive, especially for those of us who don't make a lot of money. This kind of cuts into our budgets. Still, we're very fortunate. Really important to be optimistic. We'll get through this. Carl, let's talk about interest rates. That's another component of this, and specifically mortgage rates. We're hearing from Jay Powell and the people at the Fed that interest rates could go up, and that has a correlation to mortgages. Is it time for homeowners to refinance before those rates go up?
Yeah, we've seen a lot of interest on Flipboard. Articles about mortgage rates and refinancing have been very popular in the last couple of weeks. Rates are still at historic lows. They're hovering around 3% for a 30-year fixed rate mortgage, which is great. And yeah, as you said, there are a lot of signs that those rates are probably going to go up sometime later this year or early next year as the Fed starts to ease back a little bit on various things that they've been doing to keep the economy going. And there's also a thought that the Fed may raise interest rates next year, which obviously would have an impact on mortgage rates. So if you have been thinking about that, now is probably a good time to do that research and get that effort going if you want to get it done.
And we've heard, we just had someone on recently talking about mortgage rates directly, and the Fed, I think, has started to taper back its purchase of mortgage-backed securities. That'll have a direct relation to liquidity, therefore having a relationship to interest rates. And, Carl, it's really hard to time the market. So if you're waiting for the interest rates to be at the very bottom so that you pay the minimal fee, I'm not sure that's really ideal. Maybe people should, I'm not offering advice here, but really look into hard to refinancing if you're going to do it or if you're going to buy a home.
Yeah, and again, we should remember that even if the rates inch up a few basis points, they're still at historic lows. So, anytime in the last 12 months up through now would have been a good time to refinance. And I would just note too, just on a personal note, it doesn't always make sense to refinance. A few years ago, I refinanced a 30-year mortgage into a 15-year mortgage, and I got a rate of 3.43%, which is pretty good. But I look at these new rates, they're 2.9, 4, et cetera, lower. And I looked into, well, maybe I can now refinance into a 10-year mortgage at a lower rate. But when I looked at the closing costs and all the fees associated, the math just didn't add up. It actually did not make sense for me to refinance. So there are some cases where it makes sense to stick with your current mortgage.
Yeah, really important to read the terms of those mortgage agreements. Make sure you understand exactly what the cost. Don't just look at what the interest rate's going to be. Carl, I need to take a very quick break. When we come back, is it time to look at your credit cards? You're going to want to stay tuned right here on BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms, especially for the smaller businesses? I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network.
Are you over 50? Would you like to get up to 33% more income in retirement? Then call now for this free book, Annuity Do's and Don'ts for Baby Boomers. This free book reveals little-known secrets about annuity strategies that will help you make the right choices before buying an annuity. Call right now for your free book, and as a bonus, we'll also throw in a free annuity rate report, both absolutely free for calling Annuity General today.
Call 800-504-8194.
Welcome back. We're talking this morning with Carl Sullivan of Flipboard. Carl, thanks for sticking around with us this morning.
Yeah, it's great to be here as always.
Yeah, you haven't left yet, but hey, there's still time. All right, Carl, is it time for us to reevaluate credit cards? We talked about consumer prices. We talked about rising interest rates, the effect it could have on mortgage rates, but I would say rising interest rates and interest rates in general have a real impact on credit cards.
Yeah, that's right. And credit card rates, according to the Federal Reserve, they're approaching all-time highs. They kind of peaked in 2019. They dipped during the pandemic, but we're seeing those interest rates, those APRs, average going back up into the high teens, and some hitting even 20%, which is a very high interest rate. So it is definitely something to keep an eye on, and this is a good time to kind of evaluate your debt and your credit card holdings, and maybe make some changes if it makes sense for you.
And Carl, we saw a lot of behavioral changes during the pandemic. I think a lot of that was incentivized because people had their hours cut, they lost their jobs, they had to deal with children who were needed to learn and be fed and all that kind of stuff. So kind of took away from buying. But now we've seen the credit card debt actually creep up. And I think you make a great point. If you have seen your credit card debt creep up, take a look at the terms of your credit card. And, I looked on Flipboard this morning. I saw the Points Guy, which is a big curator on your site, offer up some tips and tricks.
Yeah, there definitely are a lot of tricks. I mean, one area where I've seen a lot of interest on Flipboard recently is in the premium card market. And those are those cards that have high annual membership fees, but they come with a lot of benefits. And it seems that a lot of consumers are now reevaluating those cards because the fees can be $500 or more annually, which is a lot. Now, you do get a lot of benefits, but a lot of those benefits typically are associated with travel. And people obviously are not traveling as much as they were. So they have to look at, am I actually reaping all the benefits that I'm paying for? Am I getting the airline credits? Am I using the rental cars? Am I using the airport lounges? All those things that maybe the road warriors of pre-pandemic were using all the time, they're not using so much anymore. So maybe it's time to relook at those high annual fees and rethink, do I really need that premium card anymore?
I think that's a really good point. I mean, the world has really changed. It's accelerated into this work from home, business travel down significantly. I think people will travel during the holidays to visit family because we haven't seen anybody. We've been quarantined for almost 2 years now. But it's really important, I think, to reconsider what types of cards you have, and candidly, you need to look at the terms. You need to look at not just the introductory terms, Carl, but you should also look at the long-term terms.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I'm sure many of your viewers have gotten offers for 0% balance transfer cards, and those can be a good option if you're carrying some high balances, or if you have a lot of debt. Obviously, moving that to a 0% card for 12 months can be a really good deal. It can save you a lot of money, especially if you're serious about paying it down. But you do need to look at what happens after that 12-month introductory period ends. We've seen quite a few articles on Flipboard about this as well. Sometimes those rates can shoot up to astronomical levels, and there can be some, in the long run, it might not make as much sense for you as you might initially think.
Yeah, 0% isn't carte blanche, by the way, to just go out and buy things and just run up debt, because a lot of people have the tendency to roll it over to the next card and the next card. But there are transaction fees when you do roll over to another 0% fee. There's transfer fees, and you make a really good point. People really need to understand what they're paying, not only today, but in the future.
Yeah. And I would advise people, really do your research and look at, there are a lot of great publishing companies that do research on this, on credit cards and personal finance. So NerdWallet would be an example, Bankrate. These are CNBC. These are just a few of the partners that we have on Flipboard that are covering this all the time. So there's plenty of research out there. You just have to go out and do a little reading and educate yourself a little bit when you're making these decisions.
And don't overestimate the impact of your credit score. That credit score really, really important. Carl Sullivan, always great to talk to you. Thanks for dropping by, and thanks for highlighting the latest stories on Flipboard. Have a great rest of the day, and we'll talk to you very soon.
Okay, great. See you soon.
Well, that wraps up this episode of BRN AM. Have a topic of interest, someone you think we should talk to? drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the information in retirement markets, technology, personal finance, so much more, check out today's edition of our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse. We're back again tomorrow, this time for BRN Weekly. We'll have a very special guest, and we'll take a look at some of our best segments for the week. Until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.
Are you being audited and do you owe the IRS $10,000 or more in back taxes? Is the IRS threatening to take more of your money? Don't fight the IRS alone. The Tax Doctor is here to help you negotiate your tax bill and reduce your stress. The IRS can freeze your assets and seize your bank accounts, but you can stop these IRS actions. The Tax Doctor will work with you using our years of experience to represent your case to help you get the best resolution under the IRS guidelines. Help is here to deal with the IRS to reduce your stress. We've handled thousands of cases, so we know what we're doing. If you owe $10,000 or more in back taxes, do not call the IRS alone. Call a Tax Doctor now for a tax emergency analysis.
Call 800-224-6439.